Hello, my name is Yeonsoo Chee. I am Associate Curator of Korean Art at the Art Institute of Chicago. The Art Institute of Chicago was founded as both a museum and school for the fine arts in 1879. It was a critical time in the history of Chicago because there was a collective effort to rebuild the city that was destroyed by the Great Fire of 1871. This building, which has been home to the museum since 1893, was built jointly with the City of Chicago for the World Columbian Exposition in 1893. The Arts of Asia department at the museum was established in 1922, and it is one of the oldest Asian art departments among the U.S. museums. The Korean art collection at the museum covers over 2,000 years of artistic production from the Three Kingdoms to the Joseon dynasties. The museum also holds works by noted contemporary and modern Korean artists such as Namjoon Pake and the Dansekwa artists. And these works will be introduced by my colleagues in the Modern and Contemporary Art department later in this video. Among the Korean collection, the most important works will be the Godocelodons, and this collection exists largely thanks to early visionary collector Mr. Russell Tyson. Mr. Tyson was born in Shanghai in 1868. His father went there to become a partner in Russell & Company, and he returned to the United States right after the birth of his son. Mr. Tyson went to Harvard and he entered the real estate business in Boston. In 1893, he moved to Chicago and he was engaged in various philanthropic activities. He became a trustee at the Art Institute in 1925 and stayed until 1952. Later, he became an honorary vice president for his contribution to the museum. But most importantly, Mr. Tyson was a passionate collector of Korean ceramics when there was very little awareness of Korean art in the West. Mr. Tyson grew up in a household where Chinese objects were everywhere thanks to his parents' years in China. So naturally he grew with an interest and eye for Asian art. During his first trip back to China in 1909, he noticed Godocelodon in the US Embassy in Beijing, and that sent him on an expedition to Korea. His first notable acquisition of Korean ceramics was made during his trip to Korea in 1920. Thanks to Mr. Tyson, our celadon collection represents almost the whole breadth of the celadon production from the Goryeo dynasty, and there are truly unique and extraordinary pieces, such as this mabyong on display. From the 12th till the 13th centuries are generally regarded as the high point of the Godocelodon production, as Goryeo potters established their own style, moving away from Chinese influence, and this mabyong is the classic example. The Godocelodon at this time was already widely recognized among the East Asian countries for their beautiful colors and decorations. And defining features from this period are the innovative inlay technique called sangam and the beautiful translucent jade hue called bisek. They are all seen in this mabyong. The symbolism of the motifs decorating this vase, which were skillfully done using the sangam technique, is filled with auspicious meanings, such as two boys at play represent the wish for many offspring, bamboo and willow trees associated with the scholar's virtues, such as resilience and humility, and clouds and cranes represent a wish for longevity. Next, this understated Moonjar represents one of the unique achievements during the Joseon dynasty. It was named Moonjar because of its round shape and milky white, but if you look at this Moonjar closely, this jar is neither perfectly round nor pristine white. Rather, it is almost flat at the center because of its technique it was made. Joseon potters joined the two hemispherical halves at the center because pot couldn't hold its round shape due to its weight. And this accidental happening brought us enormous joy in appreciating this perfectly imperfect round shape. Also, many Moonjar bears mysterious spots or stains, as you see in our example. Some say it is a residue seeping from the liquid that the jar once contained, or others say that it is a crystal growth that comes from the slow cooling of the kiln. Either way, this became one of the identities of the Moonjar during the Joseon dynasty. The Moonjar has become an inspiration to many Korean artists, and the Art Institute of Chicago has great examples by Lee In-jin and Kwon Dae-seop. And these works bridge the past and present of Korean ceramics in such a meaningful way, and they also have become a gateway for today's visitors to appreciate the traditional Korean art through the lens of a contemporary artist. Another contemporary ceramic artist featured at the museum is Yoon Kwang-jo. Yoon Kwang-jo revisits Buncheong ware from the Joseon dynasty and reinterprets in his own way. Buncheong refers to gray stoneware with the white slip decorations, somewhat similar to celadon with the sangam, but less refined in materials and decorations. For his heart straw, Yoon uses the same materials and decorating technique with the Buncheong. However, in creating his work, he abandoned the potter's wheel and built a form by hand, creating this unusual sculptural form. Then he wrote heart straw using a sharp tool. It is, rather than a decoration, it's a visual manifestation of artist's meditation, as writing a scripture requires utmost dedication and devotion. I also want to share a couple of paintings from the collection, and the first one is a folding screen titled Joyous Banquet of a Godzilli, or 곽분야 행락도 in Korean. Guo was an 8th century Chinese general with many accomplishments, and he's also known to have lived a long life with many children. Because of his success in both public and private lives, his portraits were often gifted to accomplished officials by the kings during the Joseon dynasty. But from the 17th century, his iconic status shifted from a faithful subject to a person who embodies blissful life with longevity and prosperity with many offspring. So here in this 19th century painting, Guo is portrayed not as a military general, but as a venerable father figure who's celebrating his 80th birthday surrounded by his family and friends. This screen was most likely used during royal wedding ceremonies, and the screen is filled with images representing marital bliss and many offspring, such as various animals in pairs and children at play. Screens such as this were done by painters at the Royal Bureau of Painting, or 도화서, and the Art Institute example carefully follows the artistic style that is consistent with the court style, making this a wonderful example of a Joseon court painting. The Art Institute also holds a group of important Joseon Buddhist paintings, and Shitigabar with 6 light bodhisattvas, or Jijang Yukgang Bosaldo in Korean, is a great example of early Joseon Buddhist painting. Buddhism was the state religion during the previous Goryeo dynasty, but it went through the time of suppression with the establishment of the Joseon dynasty, when the governing ideology was based on Neo-Confucianism. However, some early kings and female royal members remained steady in their support of Buddhism, and Buddhism eventually became the religion of the masses. Jijang Yukgang Bosaldo is a great example of the transitional period from Goryeo to Joseon. Reflecting the change in patronage from the royals to the commoners, Joseon Buddhist painting began to be done on cheaper hemp cloths instead of expensive silk, and also included a wider range of Buddhist deities. More importantly, a very strict division between the Buddha and other Buddhist deities became loosened, creating a more harmonious composition filling the entire canvas, rather than the rigid triangular composition during the Goryeo period. Jijang Bosaldo such as this would have been hung in the hall of the underworld, or Myeongbujeon, where worshippers would gather to pray for their deceased family members.
Hello, my name is Hendrik Folkerts. I'm one of the curators of modern and contemporary art at the Art Institute, and together with my colleague we are going to talk about some artworks, most notably about Dansei-kwa, which is a sort of a post-war sort of art movement in Korea, which literally means in a Korean monochrome painting. We are talking about a group of artists who were active in the 1970s, who really kind of put sort of process, abstraction and composition at the heart of the work at a time when different sort of art historical traditions were being renegotiated.
Hello, I'm Robyn Ferrell. I'm one of the curators in the Modern and Contemporary Art Department here at the Art Institute of Chicago. And together with my colleagues, we are going to speak today about the collection of contemporary works in the Art Institute's collection. In addition to the well-known movement of Dansei-kwa, we'll also speak about Namjoon Pake, an incredible work in the collection. Namjoon Pake is considered the father of video art and was one of the foremost pioneers of media art in the 20th century. He was among the first to use television as an art form. Originally a composer of experimental and electronic music, he created performance work within the context of Fluxus movement in the 1950s. Having begun exhibiting works with television in 1963, Pake was one of the earliest artists to use a Sony Portapak, the first portable video recording device. After it became available in 1965, producing his initial multi-monitor video sculptures the following year. Humanizing technology was a primary consideration for Pake, and his varied body of work exemplifies an invested interest in how art, technology, and pop culture can change the way we view the world. Family of Robot was the first series of video sculptures that Pake created and consists of 3 generations of family members, including a grandmother and grandfather, mother and father, aunt and uncle, and children. Pake pursued this theme of generational difference through his choice of materials, providing a unified history of family and technology. Viewed as a whole, this group of anthropomorphic sculptures incorporates media hardware from various stages of its evolution across the 20th century. Gifted by the Society for Contemporary Art in 1992, the Art Institute's Baby, one of the 9 unique baby robots, was assembled from 13 Samsung monitors, which at the time were the most up-to-date equipment manufactured in Korea. In Family of Robot, television is used not as a means of disseminating information, but rather as a decorative element. Like its relatives, Baby displays an artist-created videotape. In this case, one that consists of flashing, vibrant images of hearts, psychedelic patterns, revolving bands and planets, and excerpts of newscasts depicting people, especially children in Africa and India. Pake insisted that a balance should exist between nature and technology, a notion that he realized in this friendly-looking figure, which is a remarkable example of how the artist paralleled his own practice with advances in technology. With this series and with this work, Pake suggested that technology is both a product of human innovation and a potential cause of our retreat from reality. In a sense, he explicitly humanized technology as a means of resistance, commenting that one must know technology very well in order to be able to overcome it. Although Baby's televisions are now dated themselves, this obsolescence only enhances the work's ability to evoke the rapid transformation of technology. Born in 1931, Park Saibo is one of the most influential artists in Korean art, both as an educator and as an artist. His paintings are characterized by his process of drawing frenetic pencil lines into fields of wet, white paint. This approach emerged in the late 1960s as Park was testing ways of drawing on canvas, inspired by watching his young son practice writing. Thus, he began to draw rhythmic, repetitive pencil lines into wet paint. Park worked with the canvases laid flat on the floor and with a platform that allowed him to stretch across the middle of each expanse. The force of the pencil's pressure cut through his thick white fields of paint so that graphite ultimately marked the unprimed canvas underneath, blurring the boundary between support and surface. In a recent interview with the New York Times, Park said he was pursuing what he called endless action and infinite repetition. He would title these captivating paintings Écriture, which means writing in French, simple yet disarming examples of sustained action over time. The Art Institute holds a truly masterful work from this series from 1973, the date in which the artist debuted the pioneering body of work in Tokyo. This work and the approach to painting led to Park's role as the leader of the Korean movement Dansei-kwa, where artists use traditional materials in innovative ways, influenced by indigenous practices and the international avant-garde. In addition to embedded references to traditional processes, including Korean ink painting and incising of patterns in Korean white pottery, Park's combination of drawing and painting in this work responded to the highly materialist definitions of both mediums that defined art practice and responded to socio-political issues in Korea at the time. Conceived in this way, Park's graphite lines raise questions about how legibility and illegibility function in painting, allowing for a fascinating dialogue with works in our collection beyond his immediate Tansekwa peers.
I'm very happy to introduce the work untitled 7212A from 1972 by the artist Chung Sang-hwa, who was born in 1932. Chung Sang-hwa's signature technique entails a repetitive process of applying and then removing paint. In the early 1970s, he stopped using vinyl-based paints in favor of acrylic and left geometric shapes aside in favor of filling each canvas continuously from edge to edge. Now he applied several layers of white paint, up to 3/16 of an inch, comprehensively across a stretched canvas before spraying water and lifting away the affected parts. Then too, he repainted certain sections, adding a color, a complexity, and depth. Untitled 7212A from 1972 is a key transitional work in the artist oeuvre. While a clear manifestation of Chung's signature method of peeling and sometimes laboriously scraping paint from the canvas, this work is also one of the artist's first compositions characterized by the initial, uniform, all-over application of paint. Indeed, the canvas is fully covered by two different kinds of mark making. First, the marks that remain from the first comprehensive white ground, and secondly, the similarly sized marks or strokes made by peeling the paint away again. These latter gestures sometimes reveal the loosely woven brown canvas support, and other times reveal underlayers of different white paints, some matte, some shiny, some off-white, some faintly yellow. Here, the very idea of a composition is thrown into question. Chung filled his canvases evenly and without emphasis, often shifting it as he worked in order to ensure a kind of non-compositional unity across the entire field of the work. In this regard, Untitled 7212A predicted the grid structure that would define the later works for which he would become so widely known. I'm also very happy to introduce Conjunction 7931 from the year 1979, made by Ha Chung-hyun, who was born in 1935. Ha Chung-hyun is best known for his landmark Conjunction series, begun in 1974. For these works, Ha developed an innovative painting technique he called back pressure method, which is the English translation of by up boop, which meant he applied oil paint to the back of loosely woven hemp canvases, then using his hands or other tools to push and press it through the work's front. Ha made his first conjunction painting in 1974, pushing paint with a knife from behind paper-covered wooden slats. He then applied his new method to canvas, explaining that his desire was, and I quote, "not to paint a picture, but to try and destroy in my own way the structure known as a picture." End quote. Unable to afford fine-grade canvases, Ha purchased this inexpensive surplus US military-made hemp from markets throughout Seoul. He worked in monochrome, first only using white paint, then in the later 1970s, mixing his own colors reminiscent of clay. This limited palette stressed the paint's physicality over aspects of hue, value, or tonality. He used tools, spatulas, knives, brooms, etc., instead of a brush, and worked almost as a sculptor, physically manipulating the paint instead of simply applying it to the surface. He elevated each cloth support horizontally over the ground on a table-like fashion, so that he could see and access the paint from below and above at the same time. His process was often laborious, focused on the behavior of both the paint and the support structure, as opposed to questions of subject matter. Conjunction 7931 is a rare triptych from the early phase of Ha's conjunction series. The work employs his signature by-up-boop technique in its most fundamental form. He pushed the almost burlap colored paint from behind the canvas, smoothed it over this first pass of paint from the front, and then pushed additional paint from behind until it sort of bubbled through the coarse weave of the hemp cloth canvas. Ha wanted to prompt viewers to engage actively, spatially even, for them to move around the work in order to challenge how this kind of unusual texture was achieved. Once again, speaking more like a sculptor, Ha has said, canvas is that which exists when it is looked at from all around.
I hope you enjoyed learning about Korean art collection at the Art Institute of Chicago through this short video. My colleagues Robyn, Hendrik, and I would like to thank Korean Culture Center, Washington, D.C. for spearheading this project to introduce Korean art to the global audiences. Every year, the Art Institute of Chicago presents wide-ranging of exhibitions and programs to foster multicultural perspectives and creativity. I hope you have a chance to visit the museum to see the Korean collection and much more in person. Thank you.